Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the CLSR. And I'm your host, the counselor. And we're just going to come out and say it: racism. Um, I think when people talk, they don't even realize what they're saying, and it's getting quite offending to me. Like, I'm so tired of looking at people, and then I gotta look at them sideways when I hear some of the comments. I'm like, do they actually believe the words that are coming out of their mouth? Do they not know that those are some real racist remarks? And it's funny because these are people that you know and you would expect better of them. And so everybody defends themselves if you call them a racist. However, um, they get real agitated when you say, hey, those are some racist comments. I don't, people can't handle it when you call them out. And it's really never really been accepted. And I think that people have gotten so comfortable because the term has been used so loosely, in the sense that you can't really talk about it, but people are using it out there saying, oh, yeah, that's racist, and pointing out others' flaws. However, they have problems when it comes to identifying their biases and the words that are coming out of their mouth. It just doesn't seem to them that it's plausible. And I'm very discouraged with that. I've just had enough. I'm up to here with it. And it's like, really, can somebody ring the alarm already? Like, we've gotten so comfortable, and people refer to the past, but presently, there's some comments that are out there. And see, if you even talk to someone and say, listen, you're being this racist, of course they got their backs up. And then if you bring it to another level, right? Oh, we'll talk to them, and that's where it ends. Like, what else do people, want the people who are complaining to do? Well, I guess 99% of the time you just get dismissed. Nobody wants to talk about their behavior, and it's prevalent. It's prevalent in society. It's prevalent in the workplace. And I mean, today, I think it's time that we hammer it home. We need to talk about races. Racism, no. Races. I want to be able to tell you exactly what defines a racist, so that all these people who keep talking to me and sidestepping the truth and giving excuses, right? Or backpedaling because they're afraid to admit that maybe this is something that they've adopted. And when it comes to pointing it out, there's no acknowledgement. It's only defense. And it's sad. So, like, no. So today we're going to talk about races, right? If you're a racist, how to tell if you are a racist. And we're going to get down to the nitty gritty. Hold on, because you know what? You're going to really have to look at yourself. And I want you to process when you hear some of the terms to see if you've been guilty of that or if this is what you think. Because honesty, it works only when you're honest. Anything that you want to get over, any issues or troubles that you have in your life that you want to surpass, you have to be able to identify the problem first. I've seen some incredible things going on. And I'm talking about race, and I'm talking about intercultural, I'm talking about black people with white people around, and vice versa. Some of the things that I'm hearing, it's just ridiculous. And I'm like, I'm very uncomfortable with some of the comments that I'm hearing. And it's not just white folks, right? But I mean, let's talk about everyone. There's all kinds of cultures that are racist, and it's not just against blacks, right? But let's talk about if you're a racist, if you're making decisions, putting your opinion out there, and doing things that correlate to racism, right? So we got to look inward, right? So once we look inward, this is major for overcoming some of the unconscious biases, right, that we have learned about race and racism. And how many of us are really paying attention to the things that we say? Not too many. I think we get comfortable in our circles that it's okay, even if you're around a black person, for example, and you're expressing. Some have gotten so comfortable, and you have to understand why. And yes, there are a number of reasons why people feel comfortable for making certain comments. And a lot of it is, well, media, for example, it's become a staple, right? Part of the community, part of the social media, right? People being loose with the words and the level of respect, and even some of the rappers out there that are using the BITC, and people are using that to judge. Now, that's a cultural thing, but certain terms are being violated through the media by even people of race, and you got to ask questions. But when it comes to other races or making these distinctions, where do you fall? Are you aware of some of your behavior? Like, are you really paying attention to your behavior? Right? Like, can you really look at yourself and identify any behavior or racist behavior that exists in your life? Right? So, first of all, you do have to know that if you're one of those people, and this is so common, we have these stereotypes and realistic structures in society where people, right, they make the assumption that one race is better than the other. See, if you believe that one race is superior than the other, that's a problem. And I know I got 80% of you people, hands down, you're guilty of that. And that's only if you're being honest. It's because you're looking at the classes system, you're looking at the billionaires out there, you're looking at people who are popular out there, and you're saying that class, those whites are in power, they're making all the decisions. Look what it doesn't make you better. And if you have that attitude that there's a certain class, which a lot of even middle class people have when they're looking at people who are on the street, it's so crazy, but we have it. But if the first thing you have is this ingrained philosophy that one race is better than the other, right there you're subscribing to racism, the superior race. And we know in from history some of the examples that have been out there how superiority has destroyed much of humankind. And I mean people of the same races, and it's just over being superior. So if you subscribe to that, nah, you are in trouble, and you have to drop it. That's the main line. That's where you start at. You have to start out, doesn't matter what. Everybody deserves equality, no matter how much money they make or how they're perceived in the media or social communication out there, putting all these messages, propaganda, what have you. No, just because people are treating and they have better benefits than other people, you have to start there, and you have to say no, that everyone is equal and they deserve equal respect. But if you have the superior, you're subscribing. So you have to remember this. What most people, right, try to get this racist past this little term, right? They try to talk about racism, and when they do talk about racism, they reject any accusation that you may have if they're exhibiting that, right? So where do we go from here? How do we deal with this? And there's only really one way to deal with this, and that's for us to identify and reject certain behavior, certain racist behavior, overtly racist behavior. And you know what that is. Using those racist slurs or those hurtful comments, those slick, sly comments, right? My the NG word, you know what I mean? Trying to identify, trying to act like a buddy, trying to relate, right? Hey, right? And it's used a lot, but no, it is what it is. Or displaying some symbols that, people of color might find offensive, like swastikas or blackface or Confederate memorabilia, right? If you're engaged in any of these behaviors, or if you believe that people of different races should stay segregated, right? That's right there contributing to racism. You know what I'm saying? We're not going to get into all the different. We're going to outline it here today. You know, and if you find that you're a person that defends other people's racist remarks, you know what I mean? And their ideology. If you defend it, you're racist, right? Or if you assume all people of certain races must act a certain way. Like, or if you're saying all blacks are criminals or all whites are sexual pedophiles, or a Chinese are short with small dingalings. Like, that is what they're saying. These are sad stereotypes that people are putting out there. And I'm telling you right now, there's a lot that is hurtful. But the truth is, if you bought into these stereotypes, you are in trouble. That is that overtly racist behavior, right? And if you find that you're dismissing or ignoring people of color and their contributions, that's racist, right? In many instances where they're trying to contribute, and it's not just black, there's so many people of different colors and cultures and ethnicities that are trying to be included. But if they're being dismissed or they're being ignored and their contribution isn't being respected, that's racism. So we've got racist slurs, hurtful language, comments that are oppressive, those symbols, people of color, um, they find these definitely offensive. But those people who are right wingers, the swastikas, the blackface, the slave comment making people, you know what I mean? The Confederate memorabilia, all that is, they're representative of racism, right? And just even that segregated, as I mentioned, that is it, right? So if you embrace these racist remarks and ideologies, you are a racist, right? So by take yourself out of the element and look at, are you engaged in any of those, right? Is there times where you actually fall into that behavior? Well, if you're honest with yourself and you look at yourself in any sort of way, you gotta be real, because if you're not accepting it, whatever it is, if it is, people aren't usually going to tell you because we don't really talk about it. And if you're one of those ones that likes to partake in those racist jokes, right? And usually it's covered up by some teasing, right? Usually you're trying to come in like, hey, Matt, come on in and what's up? You know what I mean? Or you're joking about this or that or making fun of certain things like regarding to um, color, relating to facial recognition or features, right? Using those jokes to make stereotypical comments, right? Just perpetuating the hurtful comments in general through your laughter, right? And they just, honestly, if anything, I've seen people look past them and they're just like, ugh. They get hurt, but they look so like they look so disappointed, but they look past it, right? And oftentimes when people get encountered by these sarcastic comedians who use these racist slurs or jokes, right? It can be a hostile situation. It really can. And make people feel uncomfortable or unwelcome. And people do that. So if you're one of those jokey ones of a different culture or the same culture, whatever, and you're making jokes, right, about other cultures or races, sorry, right? That's a bad thing. You are under that category, right? You don't laugh to encourage people who make those jokes, but too many people do it. They're uncomfortable. They don't know what to say. They don't want to challenge the person, right? So if you ever really think about it, and if you doubt that it would be offensive, the comment that you made, it's probably better not to say anything at all if you have to make comments. So that's why we're talking about it, because you got to check that behavior if you're doing it. If you're partake, talk to your friends. Is this something that you are doing? Laughing at, oh, I'm just laughing, joking. But seriously, some people go far, especially if they're raised, they're from different cultures and they come into a culture and they're raised. They got a lot of things to say that they don't understand. There is a difference. There are differences and people feel it, right? And you also have to be aware that if you find that you are being bombarded with comments about some of your behavior, your racist jokes or your comments, one good indicator is if you have to defend yourself as not being a racist. That means you're a racist, right? Seriously, if you're always defending yourself, oh, I'm not a racist. If you have to do it so much, there's something wrong, right? Because if people always accuse you of saying or doing some racist things, there's a good chance you're gonna have to make some changes, right? You're gonna have to stop denying. You're gonna have to stop being defensive or insisting that you are not, right? You're gonna have to be listening to some feedback, because if those comments are coming your way a lot, then there is something wrong. You're missing something. That's important to note, right? You could be showing some strong racial biases, but if you can catch yourself saying like, "I'm not a racist," or I have a lot of friends that are black. I don't know what you're talking about. I bet nah. When you hear those comments, "Oh, I'm related to this, that. I got a black aunt," or no, that right there, you're defending it. You got some problems here. And there's people, and see, even a lot of people of culture, right? They understand what I'm talking about. People of color especially understand what I'm talking about. When people are defending themselves, or they got to keep backtracking, or they're being accused, right? Like, this is a real big indicator that there's something wrong. And a lot of people aren't talking about it, right? And also look internally when you're in situations, because at some point or another there are people like yourself who might not be part of the conversation, but you're sitting back and you're listening, and you know that somebody could be going a little bit too far, and they could be making those comments, but you're just sitting back. You're not doing it. You're being an observer, right? So if you're one of those people who needs to examine whether you feel comfortable speaking up when others are racist, so you're really sitting back, you're not really defending or speaking up and saying it's wrong, or right? If you are not going to advocate and you're just going to sit back, that is a problem as well. That means you have a problem with racism. You really do. Because the person is being treated improperly, and you're not doing anything at all. You're a bystander. And it's true. And a lot of people do it legitimately because they're afraid, right? They're afraid that that person who's making those comments are going to turn on them, or they're not going to be their friend anymore, or they're not going to hang out. There's just so many elements to it. But if you're one of those ones that you have to think about whether you're going to say anything, or if you don't say anything when things are going on, then you got a problem there, right? You really do. And I always have to laugh when I think about those people who have to question whether they react differently around people of color. And there are people that do that, right? They do. Are you one of those ones that has you switch? You're like a chameleon. Once you get around certain people, you act one way, but then when you're around another culture, you're acting a certain different way, or you change up, right? You come across as someone different when you're with this race, right? And you feel nervous or something when you're with this other race. And you're internalizing the idea that people of color are dangerous, or they're criminals, right? So you act differently around them, right? You're not as open, you're more protective because you're buying into all the negativity that's out there, right? You shouldn't be treating people of color any differently, or any more. They're no more dangerous than anyone else, even though it doesn't appear like that on the media, because every little incident that happens, it's covered, right? Is there violence in people of color? Yes, all colors, and that's the thing. So if you're acting differently around different peoples of different color, there's a problem, right? If you're not being genuine, and you feel that, you know what, I've got to blend in, or I got to act this way because they're acting this way, right? So you start talking, this slang, or you're trying to act like you're trying to see a video and you want to fit in because it's cool. Like, that's racism. That's buying in. You know what I mean? You're buying into the stereotype, right? Language is language, right? However, trying to use that language to penetrate a certain race or culture to just fit in, it's kind of fake, right? So that's some behavior where you're kind of trying to connect with people of certain races by, Now, I'm not talking about adopting languages and speaking, you know what I mean? They're just not genuine in the way they carry themselves. And it's sad, but it is true. And there's those people with that subconscious racist thing going on, right? Like, let's say for in business, they're only really want to deal with people of their race. So people of other colors, they got this unconscious bias feeling, so they choose businesses that are similar to their own only to deal with, right? Ones that look like you, right? Who might prefer things that you prefer. So you're only going to support people of your own color, not vice versa. That's racism. And it is true. Or if you're only reading books from your culture or your race, or listening only to your music, that means I say right there, right? If you got to think about it, if you're only engaging in your stuff in this world of divert, then you got to think, right? If you're just keeping it that narrow, right? Be careful because you're only living in your world. You're not living in the real world. You're just living in your comfort zone. It's almost to me like a lack of assimilation, right? When people come to the country and, right, sure, I respect them, practicing their own cultures and religions, but I also think they should be respected everyone. You know what I mean? Not ignoring it, um, just choosing to isolate, but you're coming to other countries, like a lot of us, and you just choose to only deal with your own. Or if you're here in this country and you've been here so long, and then people from other countries come here, and then you act off. I've seen some really terrible behavior. I got to be honest. I've seen it in both ends of the spectrum where it could be quite severe, where a family here, born Canadians, living here in this country, you know, they got their privilege, right? Their backpack, and they're using it. And so when people of different races come here, they talk down to them or they act like they're ignorant because they don't speak the English language. So they feel that they can manipulate them by saying, move, or, and they make some real nasty comments because what do they feel? They feel this is their country and you're coming to their country. And basically, they don't like it. And they don't like the look of your skin, your face. So they what? They mistreat you, right? Could be that's an instance as well, but there's also the vice versa where it's people who come to the country and they don't, they keep to themselves, but they make comments or they isolate or they judge just as well by, not giving chance. There's a lot of things going on, but the truth is, if you are isolating yourself or someone else and thinking you superior or engaging in only your own culture and not recognizing that there's others, you're engaging in a form of racism because you aren't just practicing what you are doing in your culture. You're isolating your culture as if it's superior and preferred. And sure, you're identifying, however, you're excluding. And where it becomes problematic is when it comes to interacting and providing services and communicating. When that is lost and broken, that contributes to racism, right? When you sit there and just do your own, and people do it in all different races. But what the problem is, it's not just you're doing the physical, then you start doing the mental. And the mental is the problem because cognitively you start to think that we're superior because it's our culture, this is our space, this is our religion, and anything else, nah, it's not accepted. And you get that, right? Convergent thinking. Not divergent thinking, but convergent. We start to pigeonhole your mind into thinking, oh, better, superior, preferable for sure, but that's it. That's where I draw the line. And that to me is problematic. And of course, you have those people that sit on the sidelines and just totally avoid race entirely. And to me, that's just like sitting on a bench watching somebody get beat up and you're not helping them. Right? To me, you got to watch if you're that type of person that tries to avoid, you know yourself. When it comes to, and I've seen it, I've talked to neighbors, and as soon as we start talking about race, oh, this incident happened. Oh, I've seen people go pale in the face because when I've said something, hey, this is what's going on, this is that, and they're of a different culture. So instead of like understanding, have a civil they change the subject, right? They get really uncomfortable. They get pale in the face, and it's like, are you referring to me? So they're doing that stereotypical racism because they're thinking like if I'm talking about somebody on TV that looks like them, so they're all offended. Oh, you're talking about us and that's me, right? And vice versa. But the point is that they get very, very uncomfortable. So they try to totally ignore that you're talking about race. So if you're one of those people that is, you are totally um, avoiding any comments, right? Then that is an issue. And, of course, there are people when it comes to celebrating diversity, right? Things that are all around. You might not be one of those ones that's really paying attention or listening. You got your established norms like Christmas, Halloween, Easter, and all. But when it comes to maybe Afro Canadian history or Afro American history, you're not celebrating or respecting that culture because you're not told to. But if it's of another culture like yourself, everybody's supposed to be celebrating it. Everybody's supposed to recognize it and glow. So if you're one of those people that you, you know, you're not really relating or you're trying to avoid that, that is problematic. Instead of being opening and engaging in productive conversations about race, you avoid, avoid. And that's an indication that you have some racist tendencies inside you, right? And if you are calling attention to other people's race, and while you should not ignore topics entirely, but if you're calling attention to race, right, you shouldn't be overly focused on it. If you're constantly doing it, right, talking about their ethnic background, or right, if you make people feel that they're different from you, or you're just talking, and even in your own family, right, and the family member might not agree. They might not agree with you, but they're sitting there listening to you because you're older, and you're just like, well, I'm not really a racist because I'm not doing anything against. See, that's where the issue is people think, oh, because I'm not physically doing anything against that race, that I'm not being a racist. But I'm sitting up there talking my negative comments to my family members about what we're driving. How many of you have family members that, especially if they get cut off by somebody of a different race? You want to know if somebody's a racist? I'll tell you right now, take them for a drive in the big city, a busy big city. Take them for a ride. Take them for a 45-minute ride around a major metropolitan city, and let them drive around and watch what happens after a period of time when somebody doesn't make the right turn, or someone's holding up traffic, or someone's speeding or cut them off. You're gonna hear some terms come out of their mouth, right? Yeah, beep beep beep. Oh yeah, that's when you go, wait a minute, maybe dad here's got a problem with the people. You know what I mean? Maybe I'm not gonna say anything, but he's saying it all the time. And see, the more they say it, then it gets in that person's head, right? Like, wow, yeah, there is a problem there. And then it becomes transference. So they start to think that way as well because they're comments. So it's like, hey, and kids learn that too, right? Kids are sitting there listening to their parents making all those comments. So if you're one of those ones that has a tendency to call attention a lot to another person's race, you could be racist. You are. I'm not even saying could be. You are racist if that's all you're doing. And people talking those comments about certain places where they live. Oh, if you go down to this area, it's all these people. Or if you go down to this, oh, and I hate those people because they're all doing this or they're all doing that. That's racism, right? Or I don't like these people because they're dirty. These comments that people make. It's common, you know? And a lot of you are bobbing your head to it, like, yep, well, I ain't doing nothing wrong to them, so I guess. No, it's just getting those thoughts in your head. You'd be surprised what people think of what they do, right? And it's funny because when I think of some of the applications that people go through, when you're filling out those applications online, or if you're applying for a job, for example, right? And then when it comes to filling out, you got to fill out those forms, and you have to click what race you are, or it's other, or whatever, right? Like, isn't that a form of racist when you got to do that? People try to give the excuse, oh, you know what, they're doing it because if you are of this race, then we want to make sure we might be giving you opportunity. So here, let me give you an honest example that people don't tell you. So let's say I'm a black person. Okay, just for a moment. So let's say I'm a black person for a moment and I got to choose which race I am. I can choose Caucasian, Afro Canadian, right? Uh, you know, and Hispanic, whatever, Asian, whatever, or other. So let's say I have those choices, right? But my thing is, people think, well, if you choose that, people are going to sue. Oh, they're doing it because they want to identify to support that race. Well, that is what the nice person likes to think. Oh, yes, let me indicate that I'm black, and then maybe, according to statistics, black people need a job, so maybe they'll give me a job. Wrong thinking, doesn't work, it never happens. They got you psyched out. Your mind is blown because it's not the truth, it's the lie. It's the biggest thing from the lie. And companies will lie right to your face and say, oh, yeah, we've actually didn't know you ain't do nothing. Actually, what's probably going down is those companies that are emphasizing race, or they want to see you before they even get your resume. The reason why they're doing it is because they want to what? They want to create that short list. They're not looking to include you, they're looking to exclude you. And so that's why the law says you better have some other on that checklist, right? And even if you click other, that means they know that you're a person of race, because Caucasians will click it right away. But other, or if you do, like, you think it matters, but it doesn't matter, because you're either going to get it or you're not going to get it. But the truth is, that's a way to decide if they want to give it to you. But a lot of people, right, they don't understand. They don't get it. They don't get it that this is a form of racism. This is where you're judging people right from the get go, right? You're putting it out there. You're acting like you're being respectful and responsible, and you're engaging in equality, but in actuality, you're not engaging in equality. People want to believe that garbage, please. I tell you right now, no, it's not true. You know what I'm saying? No. And that is where the issues are. And I hate when people are always trying to get attention, especially when I hate that when, like, say, um, a Caucasian friend of mine is trying to friend me up in front of people or try to be cool. It's so disgusting, some of the things that they try to say or do. And it has really nothing to do with slavery or the history. It has to do with self respect, right? Like, I've seen some. It's just cool. It's crazy, but it's true. But there's certain people out there that just don't have no respect for certain cultures, you know. Yeah, like, I've had somebody say to me, like, "Can I touch your hair?" You know, uh, you know what I'm saying? And they follow it up with like a comment, "Hey, I bought something for you." You know what I'm saying? And I brought you a drink, a juice, some snack, and they're rubbing your hair, and it's just like, you want to talk about violating, you know what I mean? Like, your personal, it's disgusting how some people just violate. And you're like, well, racism, yes, they know what they're doing, because it's like, it's they push a little in there and they pull back a lot, and they do silly things. You know what I mean? Oh, I don't know how to pronounce your name. Or can you tell me what it starts with and what does it mean? Or, like, I'm having a hard time getting it right. Like, oh, really? Get out of here. It's so disgusting. It's fake, right? And oh, the one that really gets under my skin is when people try to connect with you and say, I got a black friend that, I went to school with, and, I went to college with them for 5. So I don't care. Tell somebody who cares. You know what I mean? But that's not the point. The point is they're trying to correlate, and somehow that's what, right? Giving us the impression we're all related, right? Well, the truth is we are all related, but it's not just the person that's the same color as me. It's the one who's not the same color. It's everybody. We're all related because we're all freaking human beings. If I haven't seen a human fly with wings separate from any, we're all eating, dying, right, at the same rate, catching poison, catching cancer. Like, so we're humans, and we forgot it. But people are too busy trying to decipher and make differences so they can make themselves feel better and look better. But then it's just the things that they're saying, right? To kind of connect. And it's fake. And if you're one of those fake people that, calls attention to the race, or you're making these comments, it's ridiculous. And just because two people have the same color skin doesn't mean that they're related or that they're all doing it. Because when you think that way, you're thinking, same as somebody who does a crime, they're all doing a crime. If they're black, they're black. So you can't go negative and then go positive and think you're switching it up on me. You're not. If you think that we're all connected as friends, then you think we're all doing the same things and we're all connected. So that if you can think we're friends, when you hear that crime or you hear about that crime or see it on TV, you're thinking that we're all doing it. And that's what the problem is. We're not allowed to get those individual respects. And it's sad because I seen it and it's funny and it's racist. And I'll tell you, I'm going to give you a good example here, and you do need to know this, people. This is everybody around the world knew this. Um, this is an incident that's actually just happened, and I heard in the news today, where the Toronto Raptors, the NBA champions, the Canadian Toronto basketball team, and they have a general manager, Asai Ujiri, brilliant man, hardworking, respectable gentleman who's worked hard, represented, brought leadership to this country, shows people how to maintain composure, classy individual, respect should be given. And then what happens is when the Toronto Raptors go to the NBA championship last year, and what happened was he had to go into the center of the court to accept an award. And there was an officer, a Caucasian gentleman, and what he did was a jury, he had his ID he was about to pull out. And then this gentleman, this officer, shall I say, pushed him and made some accusations. So he pushed him and then he decided that, you know what, there was a little scuffle. So this officer decided, you know what, he didn't like that this had gone down. So he told a big story to the media that he was suing, and he did. He decided to sue the organization, Asayu Jury, and he decided to go after them, and he made up all this stuff. And you know what? The people were like, ooh, sounds pretty bad, and it could have been this, it could have, didn't even get the benefit of the doubt. And then what happened was he had this body cam on. And body cam for the officer is a camera that's attached to the body that shows the whole scene. And for months, this gentleman had claimed that he was assaulted and he was injured from the assault. And then what happened was when that news came out, which was yesterday, actually, and it's been all over the news, where it actually shows where this gentleman is actually pushing this general manager during a championship back like he is garbage. Lack of respect is unbelievable. So he pushes him not once, but he pushes him twice. And I'm saying, in the history of the NBA, I've never seen something like that. And then the owners, they should all be upset. They should all be saying, because if it was somebody else, some other owner who's running these teams, who's making money for these multi millionaires, and their people get touched, there would be hell. That officer would probably be working in Alaska or something. Whatever. The point being is that none of them stood up and said nothing for him. There are people that backed him and said, oh, it's like, and I'm talking about the front office. And that officer, once it got showed, and this is what the scary part is, people. The scary part is once that video clearly showed what that officer did to Asayu Jiri, violently pushing him back, disrespect. It's just crazy. Once it showed clearly what had happened, do you know what? Those police officers still decided to charge. They decided, despite what you saw on camera, you 7.5 billion people, which was clear and evident, we are going to pursue these charges because we still believe the officer. Now, if you have a police system that could show you that is systemic racism. It's the belief system that is out there. And that is a prime example of systemic racism. And more. I have more. I can give you a million examples, but that is our close relation to a professional who is targeted based on his race and allowed to get away, manipulate, lie. And there were probably 50,000 people there. But it wasn't until a video came out that actually showed that people started to go, oh, okay, right? Oh, we don't really know, right? We don't really know what happened, and that's what's scary because the man is working in a position of authority and respect, and he's well earned it, and there's nobody there stepping up really. Sure, people are supporting him in private, but people, like I said, who are in the organization didn't say, no, no, we got to deal with this. This is ridiculous. We see what's going on there. People right there. So that's why I said that's where it gets painful. That's where it hurts. And what really hurts is when you see people could see something right in front of their face and they decide, so what? I don't care. I got to get it my. That's racism. I'm going to do it my way. I don't care what we just saw. I no. We're going to still pursue charges. We believe they were, and it was so evident. It was so blatant, and it's disturbing. In a George Floyd incident with the officer on his knee. Oh my God, that is man. That is so sad and terrible, and it's ridiculous, and we have such a long way to go. But you got to pay attention to your behavior. You have to understand how your words and your actions could be interpreted, right? Think about it. Because if you are going to be anti racist, you have to go deep. And that means, you got to make sure you're not avoiding acts of racism. You have to understand if you are engaging in any of those forms that I mentioned earlier, you know, that right there, guilty. You're guilty, and regardless of your intention, if you make anyone feel less than who they are, make them feel marginalized, if you stereotype them, that is racist, right? Right? But we don't expect, and we don't even want, and we don't even allow or think people of color, black folks, can point out racist things, right? Because if you do, right, right, if you do, shoot, watch it, because you're not going to get the response that you think. You're not going to get the respect that you think you're going to get because in society it's looked up as complaining. Oh no, can't be, right? Now there are people who cry racism when it's not racism, right? They're not. They use it sometimes. I get that, but that can't be the belief. I want you. That can't be. I want you to tell me what people are doing about this lifelong thing that we got going on. Right? We have to examine our actions, our thoughts, and our beliefs about race, and that means all races. So if you're talking about different races and you're focusing on it to the point where it is just your second language, shame on you. But we got to be realistic. There are most people who have these unconscious biases about race, right? They do. Because it's everywhere. It's in the media, right? It's on uh, public television. Family, friends, they have their opinions about race. A lot of times we dabble a little bit here. It's true for everyone, some way or the other, right? To what extent is a little bit different, right? But it doesn't make you a terrible person. You have picked up some biases from your environment, right? Your community. They have their opinions, and often we follow a lot of the opinions in our community, right? Sense of belonging. However, you got to be careful that the sense of belonging doesn't go too far and starts turning into discrimination and racism, right? It's one thing to stand up and participate in Black Lives Matter events. However, are you practicing what you preach? Now, of course, a lot of people aren't going to admit their biases. Only you know what's going on in your mind when it comes to racism and how you project those racial biases. So you have to ask yourself a few questions. Like, am I surprised when a person of color is especially well spoken or intelligent? Do I make those? That was really good, applauding, clapping, like as if like, and then the person goes, "What? Like, you know what? Like, you're going above and beyond." So if you're acting like you're surprised or you're, oh my God, like they're really well spoken, there's some problems there. And do you make assumption about the person's interests or their athletic ability based on the color of their skin? Or would you be less likely to hire a person of color, even if they were equally qualified as the next candidate, right? Or even maybe more qualified for the white person? Are you worried about who's going to be your clientele or your prospect? So if you want to cater to the money makers, maybe your bias is telling you that you have to have a Caucasian person up front, right? And do you care more about being anti racist or just not being seen by others as a racist? You know, those are questions you ask yourself. Like, do I really care more about being anti racist or am I just not being seen by others as a racist? Right? So, those are questions. Do I care about this anti racist stuff? Right? Or I just don't want people to think I'm a racist, so I'm going to stand here and act like I'm really for it. I just don't want to be categorized in that category. Right? And you got to ask yourself, do you perceive someone who has a natural hair as being less polished or professional or straight hair, right? And it could be a little bit confusing, but some people are like that. What did they say? Like, even in the black community, what's that term that they use? The good hair, right? Oh, your child girl has that good, soft, curly stuff, the good hair. We do that in our own culture, but that's racism. That is showing superiority. That's showing somebody that they're less than. Imagine how a person with beautiful curly hair must feel when they're hearing that message that, oh, you got half white hair or half black, you got the good hair. Like, that's institutional racism. We have a problem at the front line. Somebody called the boss because these people who are pointing at fingers are making assumptions and they're even discriminating against themselves most time because they're using those terms, right? Those terms that they think are terms of endearment, but they're oppressive terms, right? They're terms that put people down and make them feel less than, and we could be using it. And other cultures use it. So if you're using those comments, like the good hair, right? Or the soft skin, right? Or the light skin, you know, like these are questions you got to ask yourself if you're engaging in these activities or these comments, right? That natural hair one, that's a big one. And you got to ask yourself, do you feel uncomfortable when you see someone wearing ethnic or religious clothing, like a head covering or a tribal print or a hijab or a turban, right? Or a sari. I mean, I know colleagues who are very upset when they see women cover their whole bodies and they just only expose their eyes. And they have everything to, oh, how dare they? That's so despicable. That's racism because you're looking at them and you're judging them based on their race. Maybe you don't understand what they got going on in their mind. Maybe it's not happiness to you, but it's happiness to them. Maybe they subscribe to it. Maybe you don't agree with it, but you are judging. You are based on the race, right? And the look on their face or lack of, you're making a judgment. You're putting that person in a really tricky predicament. You're making calls. So you have to learn to identify those biases as they arise. You know, you got to figure it out. You know what I mean? What are your biases? You have to make an effort to evaluate your thoughts about race as you have them. Question whether you're making assumptions or not when the words come out of your mouth, right? Are you making it based on their race or do you have evidence or are you just being spiteful because you are being hurtful? Are you automatically assuming that all people of certain races are good students, like Chinese people? Right? There are assumptions out there. That's still racism. Even if we want to say all Chinese people are smart, right? Oh, that's what that's racism. That's putting someone in a superior position than another race. And it might not be the Caucasian race, but it might be the black race. So if you're trying to say, oh yeah, especially if you say, oh, I noticed that all the whites and the Chinese get together, but the blacks, oh, they don't. They're not part of that. So a lot of them. So we're making judgments based on what we see, right? Or if we see a black group and we see a white person and then we don't see a Chinese person, we're making comments about it. Well, why isn't I Asian? Why is it only white people? Well, what is it? Oh, they're racist. Well, maybe you're calling it out. Maybe you're racist. Maybe you have a problem with people mixing and it's not the right formula for you or it doesn't look balanced, right? So you have to avoid blaming people of color for being people of color for being oppressed. When you hear that people of color are struggling or having some problems, do you automatically wonder what they've done wrong? Are you one of those people? Oh, they must have done something wrong, right? Oh, somebody's putting them in a police car. What did they do? You automatically assume. Or do you blame their culture, their appearance, a lot of stuff? Oh my God. Maybe they should pull their pants up. Like who's walking around half the time with their pants down, showing their bum? It's so disrespectful and disgraceful. And yeah, they're violent. And yeah, they do steal. Are you clutching your purse at the cash out when a brother stands behind you or a sister? It happens frequently. I've seen it. People aren't even saying nothing. They're just standing behind them and they're just snatching their. That's racist. You're buying into the stereotype. It's ridiculous. But it happens. People feel that way and they act that way. And it's more common than you care to believe. Or if you're walking through Shoppers Drug Mart and you have somebody following you up and down the aisles, right? That is racism. I don't care. Because you know what? The assumption is there that we are doing wrong. We are actually shopping, right? And somebody's following us and acting like they're not following us. But it's oppressive, right? You want to walk out of there because you're so disgusted with the behavior that you're being treated unlike someone, but because of the color of your skin, they're following you and they're making sure that you are being monitored at all times. That is racist. Those are racist acts. And you hear comments even amongst colleagues sometimes when it comes to names. I've heard some my colleagues see when they hear names of children, they're like, "Oh my God, what kind of name is that? I would never name." How are they going to be successful in life with those type of names? You're making assumptions. You are creating barriers. You are criticizing someone's speech, right? You ever see those people who mock others? You know, certain religions that have accents, so they're up there making fun of them. They call themselves joking and kidding, but the truth is, it's still discrimination. It's racism, right? Racism based on their race and their place. You are doing something that is rude. It's disgusting. You should be embarrassed, but they're doing it. Oh, what's wrong with us? Why can't we get a? Why do we have to go through these changes? Why is everybody taking everything so personal? Well, the problem is once you get comfortable using that language or making those comments, it becomes commonplace. And there's never a time and a place for it. But people they think they're being smart, but they're using it, right? Like for you to understand anything about your biases, you have to be open to receiving constructive criticism. For sure. You know what I mean? If somebody does say something that they hear is considered racist, don't get your back up. Don't be so defensive. Just look at it as an opportunity to grow. You know what I mean? Overcoming these biases, they take some time. It might take a lot longer than you care to believe, right? You might not even get it right away. It might take some work. And you got to keep trying to work on it. You got to check yourself every once in a while to ensure that you're not being discriminatory or racist. I mean, I remember making a comment and I didn't think it was gender bias, but a woman corrected me. And I sat there and instead of me trying to defend myself, I thought, okay, you're wrong, but I'll accept it. No, I'm just kidding. Sometimes we are like that, right? Sometimes we just don't want. It's hard. It's hard to say you're wrong, right? But no, I'm just kidding. This is just me being joking. But the truth is that sometimes you make comments and you're not aware. You think you're funny and you don't really mean intent to hurt anybody, but you are. So if you are called out, admit it. Say, hey, I apologize. That's the best thing to do. But it seems to be one of the hardest things for us to do, right? We just have to remember that we do have an unconscious bias. And it doesn't mean we're bad people, right? And it doesn't mean that your conscious anti racist thoughts don't count, right? You have to remember that you can improve and work on things as long as you are pointing out the areas where you need to improve, right? Like using words of slang. We're at a point now where people are really getting fed up, a lot of people, with what's going on in society. So they're rioting. They're doing it now in the streets, right? They are. They're doing it in the streets. They're rioting, and as they should. There are things that are going terribly wrong out there. People are being killed. It's blatant. And it's terrible because you got to come to the real definition of racism. What is racism? Define. And I would have to say, right, it's these acts that are backed by these beliefs that strongly support the idea that race determines human traits and capacities and makes one race automatically better or superior than another. And that's what racism is. And we have acknowledged that there's a little bit they say in everyone. That's kind of far fetched, but they're saying it is. But I would say we have biases. And there could be biases that we've picked up along the way, but we have biases. And we have to be aware of those biases, those racist biases, right? That strongly suggests that it's going to be here for a long time and it's alive and well today. So I just asked myself, why? Or how, rather. How do people become racist? What is going on? Like, we know there's no real superior race, despite what the media says. Whether they're treated differently or not, there is no superior race. I'm sorry. You know what I mean? They're all people. However, we're all the same. But why? Why is this still a topic that's at the forefront? And I'd have to say, for one reason, I think a lot of people are just taking on views of attitudes that are in their immediate environment, right? When they're young, their family members, their friends who express these opinions, it's common. They take their views themselves, right? Unless we do something, they're going to keep those views. And that's why I said when certain communities keep to themselves and they have this certain attitude, it's problematic. There's also other people who hang around with people who are like themselves, right? If they have an attitude, so they're hanging with people who have that same negative attitude, right? You know what I mean? They spend time with these people, you know? They have similar languages or cultures, or they might have had a bad experience with one person in that community or from that race. And so now they're all blanketed the same, right? And you just become part of that group, right? We're just so quick to judge. We put labels on people. You know what I'm saying? We also make sure that these stereotypes stay alive. You know, we use words, discouraging words like lazy, right? Ignorant, right? Selfish, greedy, all these words to make judgments against people of color. And we blame others for our problems. That's a big one. You know, a lot of people are out there having problems themselves, so they just use it. It's a quick, easy response. I mean, all cultures are doing that in one way or another at some stage or another. I mean, I've had people come to me who complained about certain races, and it's just because they're feeling bad. They have their own problems. And it's easier for them to point the finger at someone else, especially when they see something in the media that's going wrong and they've had a negative experience and they relate it. Oh, I remember when I dealt with this person. They're like that. That's just how they are. And they get put into a box and they get labeled. So the problems that they have, right? They blame the others for it. So if they have a problem, it's quick, easy. I've seen people even in media where, something happens, they get robbed, and you know what? If they were behind it, the first thing that they do is blame a person of color. Black person did it. You know, that's what they say. Black person did it. And you know what? A lot of people believe it because that's what they're seeing all the time. And it's gotten to the point where it's really sad. But that's what goes down. There's no reasons or excuses for racism. It's just wrong. And people need to recognize that there are no reasons. There are no excuses. I don't care about the evidence. Oh, you could have professors talking about brains, talk about who's smarter. Listen, if you look at this world that we're living in, the one thing you do know is this: we got to stop comparing and judging, but we do know one thing. Whoever is making these judgments, who's ever considered in power, whoever is considered superior because they're in power or they have money and people look up to them, look at it like this: the world is far from in a great place. So it doesn't matter which race is up there, there should be no superior. The world is at war with itself at times, each day. And the truth is that we as people have a harder time getting along with each other than building the next, space station in outer space. We have difficult time getting along with each other, but we can create mathematical formulas to leave this planet. It's just ridiculous. So what I'm saying is, when people are racist, it has a lot to do with who they hang around, their influences, the experiences that they have. But whatever it is, there are no excuses to be racist. And people need to know that. See, this is part one when it comes to racist. So in my next podcast, I'm going to be talking about how do we deal with people who are racist? What do we do about it? We have to do something. Well, in our next podcast, we're going to be talking about how do we deal with people who are racist. What can be done? How could we take steps to stop some racism? And that's important. We've identified clearly some signs of racism, which include self evaluation, looking at yourself every once in a while, and figuring out, like, are you actually partaking in this behavior? Well, if you are, stop it. Start changing. Start educating. Start looking at yourself. Rarely can you do it by yourself. And too many people aren't taking constructive feedback. So how are we going to get through to these people who are racist? Well, that's my next podcast. And I want to say, be like the wise old bird and spread the word. I appreciate you. So we're going to talk about racism next. Part 2. Thank you. Take care.